Assessment of machines and equipment. Machines and equipment are tools that help people get work done. Potential effects include making work easier, reducing the required working time, improving work quality, and increasing occupational safety. The combination of these effects can also allow farming systems to consider production methods that would otherwise be impossible or at least not economical due to limited labor resources or unfavorable topographical conditions. Competition for the capacity of individual machines between different parts of a farming system is rare in richer countries. However, it can occur under less favorable circumstances, such as this mill, which grinds cereals for both sale and household use. Machines reduce the amount of working time required for specific tasks but often place different demands on the qualifications of the workforce. Mechanization has led to a significant reduction in the number of employed people in agriculture. However, if the freed-up labor then remains within the farming system and works in other subsectors must be analyzed on a case-by-case basis. Available figures for Germany and Europe in total indicate no significant changes in working hours in agriculture and households for over 10 years, despite all technological advances. Futurologists attribute this to the simultaneous increase in demands in the subsectors. In addition to the consequences for labor resources, the assessment of machines and equipment requires consideration of the competition for the available financial resources. All four sub-areas have financial claims. Purposeful decisions regarding agricultural mechanization and the procurement of equipment can therefore only be made in the context of the entire farming system. However, this competition is also limited by the external conditions of a farming system. Regions where the availability of energy, in the form of electricity or fuels, or maintenance and repair options are limited or non-existent require the expansion of the area of machinery to include the more general area of mechanization. External requirements for mechanization with animals as draft or transport forces include the availability of markets offering suitable animals, veterinary services, training opportunities, and, if applicable, markets for feed supplies. Within the farming system, herd management and, through the question of feeding, the necessary adjustments in crop production and the use of water resources must be taken into account in addition to aspects of operational capacity and competition for financial resources. Classification of machinery. Machinery can be classified according to the area in which they are predominantly used and their technical performance. Individual characteristics of the existing machinery may be used for this purpose in the analysis of an individual farming system. However, the comparability of machine capacities with the capacity of other farming systems requires the definition of machine classes. Unfortunately, the data required for this is rarely freely available. In Germany, the situation is exceptional in this regard due to the free provision of relevant data and classes of agricultural machinery by the Board of Trustees for Technology and Construction in Agriculture, KTBL for short. The classification of machinery capacities in other countries has to rely on the level of detail of the available data. The less detailed information is available, the more the classes must be aggregated. Measurement of machinery. The measurement of machine capacities in a horizontal analysis focuses on their contribution to the operational capacity. The assessment of contributions to the operational capacity focuses on bottlenecks in the exploitation of potentials of a farming system. This applies, for example, to the possibilities of using available arable land, burdens of the household, or the organization of administrative tasks. Bottlenecks in work completion focus on workload peaks and the time windows for specific tasks, which determine their success. In addition to more powerful agricultural equipment, more effective household appliances can also reduce such bottlenecks. However, gains in operational capacities cannot always be attributed to a single machine. In the case of required machine combinations, the component with the lowest possible performance within the time window under consideration is decisive. Suitable units of measurement for agricultural machinery and equipment are, for example, the field area performance per unit of time in crop production and the lifting or loading performance per unit of time in animal production. A helpful unit of measurement for household machines and equipment is the time saved per household chore. Valuation of machinery. The valuation of machines and equipment depends on the purpose of the assessment regarding the decision criteria of a farming system. The costs of machinery are relevant for the recording of the total income. The annual costs of machinery and equipment reduce the income of a farming system. The valuation benchmark is the annual average costs. The individual contribution of certain machines to revenues can only be determined indirectly, since revenues arise from the interaction of multiple production factors. The indirect assessment requires a comparison of income development with and without the machine under investigation. However, this requires an examination of the alternative uses of the other involved production factors. Measuring the current market value of machinery is important when assessing the liquidity situation of a farming system. Machinery and equipment can be sold at short notice and are therefore part of the liquidity reserve. Current market prices for machinery of a farming system contribute to the third-degree liquidity of a farming system. The comparison of the capacity of own machinery with the availability of other resources provides information about the risk behavior of the owners of a farming system. Overcapacities may indicate an elevated risk aversion. The calculation of the fixed and variable costs of own machinery and their comparison with the rates of contractors or machinery rings allows for the determination of the economically necessary minimum level of use for owning machines. The value of household machinery results from their impacts on the workload and the alternative uses of saved working hours. Other sources of quantifiable value may arise, for example, from improved nutrition and savings in expenses for purchases.